Alright, well, I decided to do a longer review and do all of the Souls and Souls type games that I've played. It's title I think of them. Dark Souls, as I've said, is my first one that I've ever tried. I think I actually started with the original before it was remastered. And I stopped playing it because it was hard and I didn't really know. I tried to play it as a melee character. I've never been good at melee characters, so I kind of bounced off it at that point. And like I said, I got back into it when I was inspired by a fellow YouTuber. But you already know about that if you listen to my short one I made last week. So, approximately halfway through the game at this point. I really do need to get back to it, but it's I've discovered life as a ranged magic spellcaster makes things so much easier. I don't have to worry about being up close. I did recently discover when I started over again that with the sorceress or a pyromancer that some of the NPC summons can be super powerful. I did not expect Solaire to take down the Bell Gargoyles for me. That was quite the surprise. So, I'll get back to that at some point. I've only had a little bit of limited play on the Dark Souls 2 because I tried my first time through as somebody with melee, and it took me forever to find somebody with a shield that actually would reflect anything. And I still didn't do that good. Though I did discover recently, when I was going to try again, that I can be a sorcerer. So maybe I'll try that. Maybe I'll do better. I didn't get very far into it. I did discover that you do not want to bother the ogres when you're not high enough level. They tend to bite your head off. And those soldiers with the shields. This was the first open world-ish one that I had played. You know, it allowed you multiple paths to start with, and some of them were a little harder than others. The mechanic of losing your maximum health when you die, unless you use an effigy, which I didn't find out until much later that you can restore it with an effigy. But that makes you human again, which makes it possible to get invaded, but it's always best to actually play offline in most of these games anyway, unless you really want to be invaded. So being human doesn't pose much of an issue if that is the case. Dark Souls 3 I got a little ways into, and then I decided to start over again. And I don't think I made it as far the second time through as I got the first time through. I don't remember exactly which time I got farther. Either way, I'm not far into it. But I've enjoyed watching my favorite duo through this game. And I plan to do so as well. I plan to finish it. I'm probably going to go back and finish the first one. I may not go back and finish the second one. But I'm understanding why it's the least popular of the three. Although I do think that the first boss in this game, the guy that turns into a giant snake or whatever, wow, that's quite the first boss. I actually didn't get to the PS3 version of Demon's Souls until I'd already finished the PS5 version of Demon's Souls. And I found out very quickly that it's much, much harder. I couldn't get through it quite. I couldn't even get through the first battle without running out of items. But when I did play Demon's Souls on the PS5, I did get all the way through it. I didn't platinum it yet because that requires a lot of world adjustments, which is something I didn't quite understand. I decided that I had a small guide, and it's like, okay, if you're going to be a mage, then you probably need to get this item that is in this level. Well, I hadn't really read up on the whole world tendency thing. Got my butt kicked a few times in human form, and turn the world tendency and the Tower of Latria black. Why in the world were there red mind flares all over the place? Black world tendency, that's the reason. So, I got through it. Even so, that was just the first stone of the that was black, not the entire tower. That would have made it much more difficult. But I did discover, by going through another world and getting a spell called Anti-Magic Zone, which pretty much nullifies all magic within the area around you. Well, the Fool's Idol boss in the tower relies totally on her magic to teleport. So get up next to her, cast Anti-Magic Zone, wail on her a few times with your sword, and she is down. There's a trophy for, I can't remember if it's for either taking her down quickly or taking her down without taking any damage, taking her down without attacking any of her clones. I don't remember. But needless to say, that makes it a lot easier. Then I discovered, the Queen Ring, of course, that gives you the 75% versus 50% on your health. The Thief's Ring, that allows you to be nearly ignored by a lot of enemies. The Grinding Spot and with the Reaper and the Undead with the bow. 2 shots, you get every XP from every monster in that room all at once because they're all weak to the Reaper. He goes, they all go. But I accidentally shot the shopkeeper there, and let's just say he wasn't happy about it, and he wasn't that challenging to take down, and he wasn't there anymore. So I had to go buy my arrows elsewhere. The coming up behind the demon from the beginning of the game and taking him down, from behind, that was nice. Being able to take down the one thing that took you down at the beginning of the game. The strange thing about Souls games is some of them expect you to lose to the enemy at the beginning. That's part of the story. Some of them expect you to either avoid that enemy or take him down. In the case of Dark Souls 3, you don't have a choice. But at the first Dark Souls, you avoid the enemy unless you're strong enough to take him down, which requires the black fire bombs. But in this case, so I figured out strategies for taking down everything without putting myself in too much danger, which in many cases was the Poison Mist spell. That came in very useful for one number. Of course, having the Thief Ring on to make sure that I could stand next to the enemies and Poison Mist them, they wouldn't even see me. So that's what I did for most of the bosses. The Northern Regalia, I believe it is, a 2-parter sword, was one of the more confusing items in the game because it relies on world tendency. The higher toward white, the higher toward black, it doesn't really matter. It's the more powerful. And I think each half goes the opposite direction. But there's also a trophy for getting both parts. You get one part during the game, just playing, and one you have to actually take it down from one of the 3 versions of King Alot, who was behind a red-eyed knight, which is one of the most difficult enemies. Possibly more difficult than the Red Dragon, who you could take down simply by shooting him every time he flies by. Yeah. It took a while. I think it took me 10 minutes. Something like that. Of course, I fast-forwarded, that portion of the video when I shared the video on this channel long ago. I'll probably platinum this game. It was the first Souls game I actually finished the storyline on, but getting the platinum has so many hoops to leap through, I don't know if I do it or not. Elden Ring was the first Souls game I've actually completed in full and platinumed. the only one I cared enough to go back and do everything that you must do to get the platinum, collect all the items, and that type of thing. Do all the quests, all the endings. I don't know if I shortcut for the endings, but it's just a matter of backing up your save and loading it up again. I do want to go back and finish the DLC. I do want to go back and do my revenge run through, on New Game Plus. It was quite a bit of fun to go through as an astrologer, one of the two. That was Comet Azure, like the Death Star's beam. It's like, wow. Of course, it required that your enemy stand still or move slowly. Not very many enemies, but do that. But I was able to take out at least one major bad guy with it. Well, that and the combination of Terra Magica, but that was before. This is one of my heavily nerfed games. They took down some of the damage. Every time somebody found an exploit, like shooting over a wall or finding a way to freeze an enemy boss in place, they quickly patched it out. There was some quite unfair, boss battles. You have two bosses at once. They share a health pool, or like the Godskins that not only share a health pool, but when you take one out, they're only gone for a short time before they come back. So you have to concentrate on the other one. Even with NPC help. Although I discovered NPC help may or may not increase the health points of the boss, but definitely getting two people to come and help you doubles the health points of the boss, I believe. One person to come and help you may not do much as far as that, but you definitely don't want two people helping you and then they leave or go, they die or they leave, and you're left by yourself trying to defeat this doubly hard boss. It ain't working. I was glad when they added the horse in for the final boss, but I haven't gotten to the point where I actually can use that new addition because I haven't gotten through my second playthrough yet in order to go to New Game Plus, because I had to overwrite my New Game Plus save game in order to start the DLC, which I'm about halfway through, I think. If I remember right. I've tried, and you probably, if you're keeping up with things, you might have seen all the different versions I've tried of the Faith-based caster, only using Faith spells. I even tried a version of Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn using Spear. Even then, I am with ranged because I found a really cool ranged attack of shooting blood at people from a dagger or something. So even with trying to stay melee, I end up with ranged. I just can't help myself. I've tried to start playing Bloodborne a few times. I just can't seem to get past the tutorial section. These enemies hit hard. I will persevere. I will get back to it. This is one of the most popular games, from software. But I just need to keep trying. Getting used to a melee-only game with minimum of the gun play. Although I do know a person who actually got through the entire game using mostly the gun. And that was quite impressive. Not me, though. I'll get back to it at some point. Sekiro. It looked like Ghost of Tsushima if you watched the one video and partial stream that I did of this. I said that I opened it up and started playing it because it looks a lot like Ghost of Tsushima. It has some stealth-based stuff. Not a lot of stealth-based stuff. But it's not meant to be a stealth-based game. Although you can stealth. I mean, there's quite a bit of stealth mechanics. Being a ninja-type game, of course there's going to be stealth mechanics. The main reason I stopped playing is because I totally misunderstood. You die, you come back, you die again, you lose a good portion of your accumulated experience points and half of your money. What I didn't understand was that if you spend your experience points to gain skills, you don't lose the skills. You only lose the points you haven't spent yet. Which makes it dangerous if you're later in the game. I've seen somebody put through this. When you're later in the game and you have something you're saving up for 3 or 4 points, and you die, and you lose most, if not all, of that XP, it can be very, very frustrating. But I didn't understand that at the time. I thought, okay, well, if I keep on dying, I'm going to lose my levels, my skills. That's not the way it works. I did get frustrated though right before I stopped playing because there seemed to be somebody off screen with either a bow and arrow or a gun, and I couldn't find them. But I'll come back to that. There's so many to come back to. This is one of them. Mortal Shell. This is the first non-Souls game that I put serious time into. It has an interesting mechanic. You don't get armor. You get the ability to harden your skin. You can't do it, you can't spam it. You have to kind of use it as a strategy. But if you're used to it, it's kind of cool. You don't have classes, you have shells. That's why it's called Mortal Shell. There's like 4, I think. Fighter, mage, cleric, thief, something like that. You find them, you can be them. But I hadn't got far enough into the game. You have to see exactly how you go about switching back and forth the ones you found, because you can't possibly have to go back to the area where they are to be able to become them every time you want to become them. But yeah, I need to play it more. The whole hardening mechanic, takes some getting used to. I probably get used to it. Lies of P. Yeah. I played it. I had a couple false starts on it. Couldn't get past the tutorial boss, even with the thermite explosive that you get at the beginning there. Mostly because I missed when I tried to throw it at him. But it's on the high end, if you're playing on default, which when I started playing it was all there was. Then the blue butterfly difficulty came along to make it accessible for people who have problems, with coordination or whatever, trying to play these difficult kinds of games. And it really, really changed the way the game is played. I think it's like you do 75% more damage and take 25% less damage. And it might not sound like a lot of difference, but it makes quite the difference. Although I think I have managed to get myself hurt, even with the reduced damage, by being careless. I think I may actually get through this entire game and the expansion, and I can probably platinum it as well, because most of it is find this, find all of these, do all of these things, rather than obviously difficulty-based achievement. You can't have that if you expect people to be able to get through it on the difficulty level. You can't have a difficulty-based achievement, but I think most of the trophies are actually gameplay-based. Make sure you find all the weapons, all the everything, fight every boss, that kind of thing. I think it's doable. I think I will do it. I just need to get back to it. As I say, so many games, so little time, That's it for this one. Thanks for listening. Bye.